أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وملسارا وشكارا ورزقي دارا وأولادي أبرارا واجعلني عند قبر نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم مستقر قرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويقع بعد فناء الأشياء وتفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم كما قال عز شأنه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت قال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه ماس العباد في الخلوات سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وأروة وثقى قد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I begin by advising myself and all of you to practice the piety and taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as is the best of provisions. Ayyam Azah, we enter into the month of Safar. Again, a very difficult time for Ahl Bayt and Ahl Haram as they encounter the atrocities and the calamities that befell in the city of Damascus, in Balad al-Sham, the day, the place for which our fourth Imam wept and cried, and every time he was reminded, he would say, Asham, Asham, Asham. And therefore, it is important for us to highlight and continue to speak about the tragedy itself and a reminder to all of us how it still serves a purpose for all of us in this day and age. While this ayat is usually recited for shahadat, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. Do not consider those who were slain in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be dead, بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ. Clearly, they are alive in the Rabbihim yurzaqun, and they are being provided for their sustenance near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We look at shahadat as an institution which builds societies. Hussein ibn Ali's shahadat, along with his companions, is something which built a society then, and it was so, it flourished that it still exists till this day. So that's the beauty of that shahadat, and that's the beauty of that martyrdom. Blood of a shaheed enters the body of the society, which was half dead, or in some occasions completely dead, and brings it back to life again. Shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada and shahadat in general is not giving into the hands of enemy with your last breath, up until your last breath. And therefore we derive a great deal of lessons from Imam Hussein's life and from this martyrdom, which of course is Javedan, is continuous, and will live forever. Imam's life of Sayyid al-Shuhada is like that water, source of life, rescued the tree of Islam from drying up and eventually dying. That's why the leader of freedom has remained forever. Because when you do something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sifat of Allah is, He's been there azali and abadi, forever and ever living. Anyone who's associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also become azali and abadi, will always remain. So therefore, we look at some of these words of Imam as he spoke about the shahadat, and he spoke about bringing awareness to people and bringing them back to, senses, in other words. Because how can a society go to the extent where they just put a blind eye and not speak up and not raise their voices? And therefore, freedom of, the leader of freedom, Imam Hussein, gave us all that opportunity, men and women, young or old, Muslim or non-Muslim, had opportunity how you're able to speak up and how you're able to live up to those values, those virtues for which insan has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Insan's purpose is not just to dive into this world and be consumed by the luxuries of this world, but rather the heartbeat is when the humanity is suffering and people are able to speak up against it. And therefore Imam, he said, فَإِنِّي لَا أَرَى الْمَوْتَ إِلَّا سَعَادَةً وَلَا الْحَيَاةَ مَعَ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا بَرَمًا. He said, I don't see death to be a calamity. You think death is a calamity? No, death is actually, I consider martyrdom to be prosperity. because it's in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at this view of death. Look at this view of maut. Look at this view of, then when it becomes shahada, then of course it's another story. But as is, death should be looked at what? Prosperity. A way of liqa Allah, that you are meeting your Rabb. And who wants to stay away from meeting their Rabb? And then Imam said the following sentence, وَلَا الْحَيَاةَ مَعَ الظَّالِمِينَ. But if death is not coming, or if death happens, that's good. But I would rather choose death over a life which is along with zalimeen, along with those who are oppressors, and the life with oppressors is humiliation, nothing more than that. So I'd rather have prosperity and die than to live in humiliation with those who are continuously doing atrocities. So I recited this ayat for you, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا. And Allah then rewards shuhada by calling them to be alive. Don't consider the person who you just buried similar to the person who died at home naturally. And they're different. The person who gave their life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although you laid both of them down in the grave, there's a difference between the two. That person is dead, this person is alive. And that's the difference if you look at it from Quranic perspective. It said even further, if this ayat wasn't making sense, as a lot of people have a hard time understanding, and they do ta'wil of this ayat by saying, no, over here, it's referring toward hayat in, for example, in purgatory, in their barzakh, or hayat ma'navi and all that stuff. Another ayat of Quran says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. That do not consider or do not call. Over there was وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ, here وَلَا تَقُولُوا. Don't call that person who gave their life fi sabilillah, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be dead. Amwat. Amwat is the plural of maut. Consider them to be dead. Bal ahya'un. On the contrary, they're alive. Walakin la tash'urun. You are unable to understand that. Tash'urun, you don't have the shu'ur yet. You don't have the ability yet to comprehend how they are alive. There are certain phenomena in the world that are mind-boggling, beyond understanding. And we can't make sense of it because it's just too much for us. Our mind is unable to comprehend and fathom that. And that is one of those concepts which is being mentioned over here. So, وَالَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَلَنْ يُضِلَّ أَعْمَالَهُمْ سَيَهْدِيهِمْ وَيُصْلِحُ بَالَهُمْ. Another way of looking at those who gave their lives in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that those who were slain in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their amal will never be compromised. Their amal will never be lost. Their actions will always remain. That's why you remember so many shuhada in the history, because of their work, the thing that they left behind, the legacy, the bright legacy that they have, those amal continue to survive and live. He will guide them and set right their affairs, even in the hereafter. And then, of course, there are many such ayat in Quran where Allah speaks about those who were considered to be martyrs. Similarly, many ahadith from Ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam highlight on the concept of martyrdom. I'll share a few with you. Sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam said, Ashraful maut qatlul shahada. Ashraful maut. The most noble death is the death of a martyr. And this is because فَوْقَ كُلِّ بِرٍّ بِرٌّ. Above every virtue, there lies another virtue. You name a virtue. Khidmat khalq. There's something better than that. Name a virtue. Sabr. There's a virtue better than that. You name a virtue. Shukr. There's a virtue better than that. You name another virtue. You will find something which is always and constantly better than that. Hadith says, فَوْقَ كُلِّ بِرٍّ بِرٌّ. Above every virtue, there is a virtue. حَتَّى يُقْتَلُ الرَّجُلُ. Until a person is martyred. فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. فَإِذَا قُتِلَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَلَيْسَ فَوْقَهُ بِرٌّ. When a person is killed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there isn't any virtue that is above that. So therefore, you understand the concept of shahadat to be that virtue in the sight of ma'asumin, that there isn't any other virtue that could top that. And therefore, there's this sense and there's this incentive that is being given. He says, مَا مِن قَطْرَةٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ قَطْرَةِ الدَّمٍ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. There's no drop of blood which is more beloved in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the drop of blood which is given in the way and the sabil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Prophet then closes off this whole concept of shahadat and giving, sacrificing in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, Ma ba'alu shaheed. This is really phenomenal. He said, Ma ba'alu shaheed, La yuftanu fi qabrihi, qala kafa bil bariqati, fawqa rasihi fitna. Why isn't a martyr tested in his grave? Person who's been martyred, why don't they get tested in the grave? You know, we have this concept, when you enter the grave, what happens? Sawal jawab. Munkar wa nakir come and they start questioning you. Man rabbuka, mal kitab, mal imam, man nabi, you know, what's your book, what's your religion, who's your nabi, who's your imam, who's your rabb? All these questions are asked. And of course, they might be very simple questions today, but when you are facing the terrifying aspect of death, over there, sabqat al-lisani, you will forget even the most basic things. And I'll give you an example of that even in this life. When you are presented to speak in front of a crowd of 100,000 people, okay, that's too much, maybe a crowd of 10,000 people, you might even forget your own name because of the your high blood pressure at that time and the tensions are rising and you're feeling nervous and the nerves are kicking in because it's not easy to stand up in front of a large crowd and speak. Similarly, when you are being tested, when you go to an examination hall, when you're giving a big exam, you're nervousness kicks in. A lot of times things that you know, you even forget that. You start drawing blank. He says when you are in that terrified situation in your qabr, and Munkar and Nakir come and ask you these questions, the basic questions that who's your Rabb, you'll forget. Who's your Nabi, you'll forget. Who's your Imam, you'll forget. What's your book, you'll forget. That's the reason we remind the dead person by this talqeen. We read this talqeen twice. One before we close the grave, second after we close the grave. That is to remind them because they will have hard time answering these questions. Rasulullah says what? Why isn't a martyr tested in the grave? He says sword above his head at the time of his shahadat was enough for his test. That sword that was hanging on top of his head was enough of a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put a martyr through another test after he's buried and laid into his grave. All the tests were done right here in this life. So you understand that the incentive which is being given for those who give their lives in the way of Allah. Amirul Mu'mineen said to a prophet after not attaining martyrdom in the battle of Badr, or in the battle of Uhud, for example, Rasulullah said, your shahadat is already written. You will be martyred in the best of the actions, in the best of the places, in the best of the months, in the best of the conditions. Amirul Mu'mineen, shahadat takes place in the month of Ramadan, the best of the times. On the night of Qadr, the best of the nights. In the best of the places, inside a masjid, when Imam was leading the prayer. In the best of the actions, in salat, which is sajda, when he was in sajda. That is where the shahadat of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he was struck by the sword of Ibn Muljim la'natullah alayhim. Imam Ali, after the shahadat of Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, he wrote a letter to Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, "For wallahi, this is the affection and the love Imam had for Muhammad, whom he called Muhammad ibn min sulba Abi Bakr. He's my son, but from the progeny of Abu Bakr." He said what? "For wallahi, lawla tama'i in the liqa'i aduwi fi shahadati wa tu'ti'i nafsi alal maniyati la ahbabtu an la abqa ma ha'ula'i yawman wa la altaqa bihim abada." Had I not been yearning to meet the enemy for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali enters the battlefield to see the enemy, not because he has any affection towards the enemy. No, he sees the enemy for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who wants to see their enemy? He said, I have this affection to see my enemy because I get to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says, had I not been yearning to meet the enemy for the sake of martyrdom and the shahadat in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not prepared myself for death, I would not have killed to be with these people for a single day, nor ever meet them. It's not like Ali wants to meet these people. No, because of the shahadat and the martyrdom that I long for and the meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I enter this battlefield. Otherwise, I don't want to be with these people. These people are not even worthy of my presence, let alone your presence. That is Amirul Mu'mineen. He said, because of the shawq of shahadat that I have, because of the liqa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I have, that is the reason I enter into this battlefield. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But then the second aspect of this shahadat that we find in the plains of Karbala, from the shahadat of Imam Hussein. The second portion after the martyrdom of Imam is the carrying out the duties by the hands of Bibi Zainab in the form of showing people the path of freedom, freeing people, azadi. It's a trait everyone holds dear, but has different understanding of it. Freedom means being free from everyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Remember the story of that man in the time of our seventh Imam, whose name is Bishr Hafi. That when Imam went past his door, he heard the sound of music. Imam knocked on the door, Qanis came out, Imam said, that is your master a free man or is he a slave of another? She responded with pride, no, he's a master. He's my master as well. He's a free man. What are you talking about? At that time, of course, this was a conversation. People took pride in being masters and having slaves. Imam said one thing. He said, I wish he was a slave. And then he walked away. When the Qanis came inside, told Bishr Hafi that this man said something weird, I didn't understand it. Bishr Hafi understood who it was. It was Imam. He ran barefoot. That's why he's called Bishr Hafi. He ran barefoot after Imam. And he said to Imam, I understood what you mean. That you wish that I was a servant and a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the ultimate freedom. That's the ultimate azadi, to be the slave of Allah and not to be the slave of anything else. Our relationship with this world, with our wealth, with our nation, the status and the children are obstacles in the path of this freedom. Our captivity in front of the desires and materialism is a sign of weakness of our will and our conviction. And that is the reason father of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. I don't need to lecture you on power, how power hungry people are, iqtidar, what it does to people. Someone who might be a very jolly and decent and compassionate individual, the moment they assume leadership or powerful role, become a president or a minister or king or whatever the case may be, sometimes, majority of the time, you change their character, changes drastically. Imam, when he assumed the worldly power, right? When he was called the fourth Khalifa, and people ran to his door, and they stormed his door, and then they asked for his, bay'at, or giving their bay'at to Imam, making him to be the Khalifatul Muslimin. What were the words? He said, Ala hurrun yada'u hadhihi al-lumadata li ahliha. Innahu laysa li anfusikum thamanun illa al-jannah fala tabi'uha illa biha. Is there no free man who can leave this chewed morsel? आप कुछ खाना खाते हैं, निवाला मुंह में होता है. This chewed morsel that you just bit upon it, Imam refers to this chewed morsel as the world. He said, is there no free man who can leave this chewed up morsel to those who like it? Certainly the only prize for your nafs and your soul is Jannat. Therefore don't sell your soul for anything except Jannat. He said, you come after me seeking my allegiance or asking me to become your leader, and you want to hand over the keys of the world to me. He said, leave it for those who are after it. Ali is not after this. To me, it is like a chewed up morsel. Imagine someone presents you with $1 billion gift and you say, well, this is only a chewed up morsel in front of me. That's a very big, courageous thing to say. Similarly, when our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam, Khalifa of the time, wanted to give gifts to everyone. So he called up Imam. Imam came and he said, all this wealth that is sitting over here is for you. Imam said, what is the occasion? He said, something like this happened and I'm excited and therefore I want to give this to you. And he was giving it to everyone. And so the biggest portion, he gave it to Imam. When Imam came in, as you walked into the masjid, you put your shoes in the racks. Of course, at that time they didn't have racks, so they put the shoes, well, even now, when we have racks, people put the shoes on the ground. So just imagine at that time, the shoes were all around, across, on the ground. When Imam walked in, the shoes were facing in this direction. When Imam was walking out, one of the slaves or the servants over there, he picked up Imam's shoes and turned him around, so Imam just walks right out. He doesn't have to turn around, put his shoes on, and then walk backwards. Imam said, all this wealth this Khalifa has given to me, this is all yours. To that slave, to that servant, who flipped Imam's shoes. He said, this all has no value to me. This is where a person recognizes who I am. You want to value me with the wealth that you're given to me, thinking that now I will become loyal to you, all the wealth that you want to bestow upon me, because of course, if someone gives you something, you go under their command, and you sort of value them because of what they have given to you and done to you, the favor that they have provided for you. Imam said, there's more to this person because he recognizes my worth. He flipped my flippers and my chappal and my shoes. Everything belongs to you. This is what the view of Sayyidul Shuhada, this is what the view of Imam Hassan, and this is what the view of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the life is spent with hereafter in perspective. That's the real life. When we don't have the ma'rifat of the hereafter, when we don't have the ma'rifat of the life which is the eternal abode, then of course this life is wasted. But the life with perspective of hereafter in you is well spent. Real life is the one which is spent with good deeds, practical life, not temporal, not spatial. As they say, umre amali, not umre zamani. That your age should be with actions and should be qualified and should be associated with actions and the amal, and not with how long you lived. People in the previous centuries used to live for hundreds and hundreds of years. 600 years, 700 years, 800 years, it was no big deal. People lived for that long. Regarding this, Quran talks about it. Hazrat Nuh lived in a time when people lived for that long. He spent 950 years amongst his people. And Riwayat mentioned he was over 2,000 years old by the time of his death. And similarly, many other scholars, even regarding Luqman, mentioned to be that he was more than 400 years old. And other ages are mentioned about all of these people. But the value, if you have for the life in the hereafter. So there's a story of a man, probably in the time of Hazrat Musa ﷺ or Hazrat Isa, either one, I don't recall. He saw him worshipping in the middle of, a field, a desert. And Hazrat Isa or Hazrat Musa, either one, went up to him and said, how come you don't pray inside your house? Why are you praying in the heat of the desert? He said, I was told by someone, servant of Allah, that I will get to live for 700 years. So I said, well, I'm only in this world for 700 years. Why do I even need a house? He said, you live for only 700 years. Someone told me that my age is 700. He said, 700 years. Why do I even need to build a house for 700 years? Hazrat Isa told him, people in the Akhir Zaman will only age up to 60, 70, and they will build forts for themselves as if they're going to reside in them forever. He said, if I knew that I will only live for 60, 70 years, I will never lift my head from the sajda for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, that's a deed, that's a perspective which is very difficult for us to, compete with. Nor do we want us to go ahead and put ourselves completely in the shoes of these individuals. But the thought of it, they said, I was only going to live for 700 years. I didn't think about this world at all. I was only thinking about the hereafter. Because what is 700 years compared to eternal abode that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide to me when I will be in the hereafter. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And therefore freedom is where insan can recognize his honor and nobility and not given to disgrace and be despised. Imam Hussain said, Mautun fi izzin khayrun min hayatin fi dhul. That maut and death with izzat and pride and honor is much better than hayat, living in disgrace and of course in a situation where you're despised. Imam preferred death over bay'ah, allegiance to Yazid. His logic was that I will not give hand to disgrace and will not be submissive to their rule like a slave. Well, there were many prominent personalities at that time who gave in. They didn't choose this path. And that's the reason you find the religion which Rasulullah has brought to its peak when Al-Yawm Akmaltu Lakum Dinakum was revealed, has gone and tanazzul to the extent when this deen is in need of help, only 72 come out for it. Only 72 come out for the support of it. What happened to the entire Muslim empire is spreading from east to west. All these Muslims and all these wars that had taken place in the times of Khulafa, where they extended all the way to Khorasan and went all the way to Morocco and everything in between. It's a big place and big piece of land. But when it comes to Islam, you find only 72 stand up. Why? Al-mawtu awla min rukub al-ar wal-aru awla min dukhul an-nar. Death is better than living in disgrace, and disgrace is better than entering into hellfire. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll conclude with this, as there's a lot of discussion in this regard of freedom and shahadat. According to Sayyid al-Shuhada's words, Imam knew about his shahadat from before, and that even is a bigger challenge when you know about something. Right? And then, of course, misconceptions were created regarding how Imam knew and did not deviate or divert his path. He still continued on because, of course, there are philosophical answers, which is not a time and place to give. He knew the smallest of the details. Prophet had informed him. Prophet knew about it 50 years before the Shahadat of Imam Hussain. Rawayat mentioned that he had seen this. Jibreel had shown it to him. Even the sand from Karbala was given. So Imam knew the smallest of the details of it. Prophet continuously mentioned it. This knowledge did not only slow Imam down, rather increase his thirst for shahadat. Right? If something like this is known, it's going to slow you down. It's going to make you turn around. It's going to make you, give you these ideas. But the shawq and the enthusiasm for freedom and for shahadat only drove Imam further at a higher speed. And that's the reason these words should be written with gold. That Imam said, Taraktul khalqa turran fi hawaka aytamtul ayala likay araka. I left the entire creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turran fi hawaka, in desire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aytamtul ayala likay araka. I made my children yatim so that I can witness the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That can only come when you are the follower of Hussein ibn Ali. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to be able to understand the tragedy of Karbala, the shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and the virtues behind it, and so that you and I are able to practice and implement it into our lives. Inna asal hadith wa ablagh al-mu'idha kitabullah a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم سبحان من سبقت رحمته غضبه وبسط اليدين بالرحمة سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا إلا دون وسعها فعن السيئات ولم يجاز بها سبحان من لا يزداد ولا معصي العباد إلا كرما وجودا ولا كثرة الذنوب إلا فهو صفحا نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو لطوف للعباد بجوده ولفاظ المظلمين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين على قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا للصفي إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين قائد الغر المحاجرين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وعلى سيدة النساء الفاطمة الزهراء سيد نساء العالمين وخاتم النبيين بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليه وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد وعلى حسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان ماهر آثار البدع والطغيان هادم ابن الشرك والنفاق حاسد فر البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا وكل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمراء المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات. اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهل ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآل المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفع ذكر ان الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي من كل ذنب وأتوب. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. ربنا فرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بجاه محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل
على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيح جناب فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. All of us together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة لابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Let us recognize the sponsors for today's Jummah lunch. It is the family of Tawsif Bawa. Please recite Surah Fatiha for the following marhumin: Sultan Ali Bahadur Ali, Hussain Ali Rajab Ali Sagarwala, Bahadur Ali Pir Bhai, Zahra bint Fazia, Khadija bint Qasim, Mustafa Hussain Ali Sagarwala, Tahira Bano, Bahadur Ali Pir Bhai, Khairun Nisa Bahadur Ali Pir Bhai, and all marhumin of Bawa and Sagarwala family. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Inshallah, a few announcements. Tomorrow, being Saturday, August 10th, inshallah, the annual Imam Hussain Day will take place. Program is scheduled to start with Namaz-e-Dhuhr at 1 o'clock. The reception will be 1 p.m. and inshallah the program will start at sharp 2 p.m. It'll be downstairs in the Masjid-e-Ali banquet halls. Your presence is requested. This is the 46th annual, established in 1979. So it's 46th year of this Imam Hussain Day. Of course, people know about it. One of the speakers would be Sheikh Jalil and Dr. Jihad Turk. Alongside, inshallah, I will be also part of this program. So again, keep in mind tomorrow at 1 p.m. Upcoming programs, inshallah, the next series of majalis commemorating the wafat of Bibi Sakina Salamullahi Alaiha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That series of 3 majalis will start from August 14th until August 16th. Sheikh Bilal Hussain, inshallah, will address the gathering. Programs have been starting with Namaz-e-Maghrib, so the same, nothing changes. Inshallah, Namaz-e-Maghrib, followed by Majlis-e-Aza, and details of that will, inshallah, go out on Monday with the details of Taboot and all that stuff. Stand with Hussain, Stand with Dignity are requesting you to join the Arba'in Walk to stand in solidarity with the values of Imam Hussain, freedom, justice, morality, and equality. And that'll be Saturday, August 24th, a time at 1:30 p.m. A starting point will be Princeton Battle Monument Park. The details are also on the flyer in the foyer. So as always, you've been joining. Please do join. Also, Masjid-e-Ali will be participating in its second blood drive in the Ayyam-e-Aza. This will be, inshallah, Saturday, August 24th, same day as that procession, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So the blood mobile will be here at the address, and the email, inshallah, will go out regarding this, as there's still time for it, but inshallah Monday the email will go out and you can start registering ahead of time. Alhamdulillah, it was a very good turnout in the first blood drive, and we hope the same thing as we give this blood in the name of Sayyid al-Shuhada, inshallah. Also, there's a big sale going on for Gulshan-e-Fatima, a Girl Scout project where they are building a community garden. Do support them right outside when you walk out. They have the bake sale, support them, buy stuff from them, inshallah. This is an effort to this unique project of Gulshan-e-Fatima, that they're building a community garden. Inshallah, other majalis series, following majalis series will be on the Arba'in majalis. That'll, inshallah, the details for that will go out. There's a special request for majlis on 17th of Safar, which is going to be the Shahadat majlis for our 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada alayhi salatu wasalam. That majlis will be August 22nd, Thursday. Again, starting with Salatul Maghribain. The request is from the sponsors that you attend this Majlis Aza along with other majalis. Let us recite Dua Sihat for all of those people who are sick and in need of dua, those who are suffering, struggling, going through a difficult time, especially the people of Parachinar and those who've been affected by this tragedy that is ongoing, the genocide that is happening, as well as the continuous atrocities in Palestine and other parts of the world. Let us remember all the victims. Let us remember those who are suffering. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them a quick relief. Let's recite this ayah karima 5 times together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibul mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض إلهم مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. Although it happens every week, but no need for a reminder, but just reiterance that, inshallah, Saturday and Sunday we have Salatul Fajr. Tomorrow, 5 a.m. Sunday, inshallah, will also be at 5 a.m. Salat. for our Quran discussion, and breakfast, inshallah, will be served. You're more than welcome to come and join us with your family and friends. Start the day right with Salatul Fajr, inshallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. Ashhadu anna Aliyan hujjatullah. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي والمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.